Okay, awesome. Let's start. So, welcome to another edition of the Centaura webinar series, on which we always try to cover topics that are very sort of top of mind and sort of at the intersection of Web3 and sort of frontier tech. Um, Today we're gonna be discussing a topic that has been making the rounds recently. That is all this sort of a speculation with cybersecurity risk in crypto, particularly post the announcement of Anthropic unveiling the Mythos model that had cyber exploit capabilities. The weekend after Mythos was announced like on a Thursday. That weekend I had some conversations with some people from Anthropic, and I wrote this paper that probably it will be posted in the chat, that essentially outlines the thesis that we're going to discuss here, and it sort of went crazy, and a lot of investors and projects and blockchains start calling about how to think about some of these problems a little bit deeper. So what today's discussion is that there are no real solutions to any of the problems that we gonna present. There are two ideas in particular that we want to double click and go deeper. As a matter of logistics, you can use the Q&A for any questions. I'll try to wrap this up in 30 minutes, so we typically go very fast on this thing to give you your time back, and it's very technical, but very easy to follow as well, right? So we're gonna keep the discussion at a very decent level, but we can go as technical as you wanted us to. As always, we like to start with a Centaur update of the last 3 weeks. We have been on a massive sprint of releases. If you have been following our X account or socials, we have released three new bolts, already accumulated over a few hundred millions between them. And we have a few more coming in the next few days. So I posted a few days ago that we're releasing our five bolts. So we have released three. We've released a bolt in Camino and Solana in partnership with Athena, with USDG and USDE that has done really well. We announced our partnership with Tempo as well, and we launched our partnership with Figure. We A few weeks ago we announced the release of the Smart Yield Public platform, that is essentially the aggregation of all our pros into a public experience. So you have yields, risk management, research, alerting, and very soon insurance. So go to vaults.centura.com and you can see literally all our public vaults are there, and you can interact with them. And it's the best vault platform in the market by a mile in terms of institutional readiness. As I said, a lot of bots that we have launched. Earlier this week, we announced a risk radar with Camino, so you have real-time risk monitoring for the Camino protocol in our risk radar. And as I said, we have been very active on both. Launched a USDG bot, the Prime bot in partnership with Figure, the Path USD bot in partnership with Tempo. This one is you should keep a track on. We have another major announcement related to this bot in a few weeks coming. And we have two more bots launching over the next few days. So we have been shipping products incredibly fast. So that's pretty much everything that I'm gonna mention about Centaura. So we try to give these updates relatively quickly so we can dive into the topic for today. As mentioned in the short intro, recently we have seen a tremendous amount of exploits in DeFi protocols, and one of the overall takeaways that that you're gonna get from this session is that this is gonna get worse, not better, over the next year or so. Crypto represents probably one of the biggest honeypots, one of the biggest targets for cyber security exploits powered by AI. And the cyber defense model that we have based on audits and things like that couldn't be more outdated relative to where technology is today. Over the last few weeks, we have seen almost 1 billion in terms of exploits, notably on Resolve, RSCs, and Drift. Those were three major hacks and a few peripheral ones that have happened. And at least two of those, the mechanics of the attacks, the DNA of the attack was at least the exploration phase was very clearly AI generated. So if you think that crypto is open source and is holding capital, so obviously it becomes a very very strong target for this type of attacks. The interesting thing is that at the same time that this is happening, the entire cybersecurity space is open and sort of reinventing itself, reimagining some of the capabilities of the last 20 years with AI at its core. And this is not the same type of thing that you're seeing in agentic transformations and all that. Essentially, this is a new category of cybersecurity disciplines that are emerging that have AI capabilities at its core. Anthropic, who is notorious for creating all these doomsday scenarios, made a big deal out of their Mythos model, saying that it has very unique, it excelled on cyber exploit capabilities and that it wasn't trained for, and essentially created this thing called Glasswing that it was would call a bunch of the biggest companies in America to give an access to the model to sort of ready their defenses before they're released. And that I know at least two big DeFi projects that got access to it, and they found very serious vulnerabilities. And I spent time talking to Anthropic engineers about this, and it's quite real, right? Unless everybody in Anthropic decided to suddenly um, lie about this. No, so why is this so different than what we've seen before? So probably one of the most interesting things to understand is this idea of zero-day discovery, right? So zero-day vulnerabilities is vulnerabilities that nobody knew it even existed, right? Famously, Mythos was able to discover a bug in OpenBSD, that is this operating system that is running pretty much a lot of the defense systems in the world, that the bug has been there for 27 years. And this idea, once you have the vulnerability, using AI to weaponize that, it becomes a matter of hours or minutes instead of months, right? Like it would take before. So the time from scanning to weaponizing a vulnerability just got extremely short, and the vulnerabilities just got extremely more sophisticated. As part of this release, Anthropic done two things. One is this thing called Project Glasswing, that is all the companies that had access to Mythos to sort of ready their defenses in anticipation of the launch. And then at the same time, and quite conveniently, if you ask me, they released a thing called Cloud Security that is essentially a platform that allows you to uh, um, uh, plug in a source code, and it scans vulnerabilities and it suggests the patches and things like that, and it does that in a very iterative way. So it's a new mechanism, a new type of platform for cyber defenses for this type of attack. At the same time, they're not the only ones doing this. So OpenAI has been very busy at work. The most impressive thing that they announced is this thing called Codex Security that is part of their frontier stack, that is their enterprise stack. So probably you don't have access to it, but it's equivalent of cloud security. So it's very, very similar. in terms of user experience, in terms of capabilities, and also very competent. And they have been embedding a lot of cyber defense capabilities on the new GPT 5.5 model. Google is arguably the most mature of all this stack. They're just not making a lot of noise around this thing. And I don't know, for some reason, the market seems convinced that everything DeepMind does just sucks relative because they don't get the credit that those guys deserve for the amount of progress that they're making. So they have released this thing called Code Mender for quite some time that it is automatically doing patching and fixing and vulnerability scanning. Microsoft, this is one of my favorite architectures that I have seen. It is from very recently, a few weeks ago, called M-Dash, is still in research. This is one of the architectures that we're going to discuss. Essentially, they created this agentic system for cyber defense that it was able, in the cybersecurity benchmarks, it was able to outperform the individual models. Obviously, you need to take the Mythos scores in Cyberbench and all that for what Anthropic says it is. But this was able to perform really well. And a lot of the ideas in my paper, they're related to this architecture. I think it's very similar. And then we're seeing more and more benchmarks in the space. So you have this thing called CyberGym that it gives you a lot of testing against vulnerabilities for real projects. In April, we got this thing called Mythos evals that is for multi-stage attacks and things like that. So the evaluation capabilities of these cyber exploits are getting more and more sophisticated as well. Now, an interesting thing here is that this is not a race only between Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic. One dynamic that is very common in frontier AI labs is that the Chinese models are typically trailing 5 to 6 months behind the American frontier labs, and that time is been very consistent. So there was a time that it was shrinking, but it has remained very consistent. So what that means is that after Mythos launches, and because there is a lot of this thing called distillation going on, that they distill knowledge. All the labs do this, right? In the OpenAI Elon Musk trial, the XAI basically admitted that they were distilling data from all the OpenAI models to train Grok. So all the labs are doing this. So you should expect that those capabilities will be in the open weight Chinese models, and then that is a different level of complication, right? Because those you don't control, they're not big guardrail, they can be fine-tuned, they can be post-trained for even more sophisticated attack capabilities. So that's what I think this picture is going to get way more complicated for crypto, because instead of having Anthropic could put restrictions around Mythos, but then if you have Kimi and the CAI and DeepSeek and Quent and all these Chinese models in pipelines doing cyber attacks at the same time, is very complicated because they all excel at different thing. So you should expect this race onto the first class cyber capabilities to be a key feature of every new model for the next few months onwards. So that picture gets very complicated for crypto very quickly. So if you are going to attack an ecosystem based on cyber exploit capabilities against code, typically open source is the best way to do it, right? Because the code is public. So imagine an infrastructure that is completely open source, not only a project, but a project and all the dependencies of a project that is holding capital, and that it doesn't have very strong defenses. And that is crypto today, right? An ideal playground for these models. It's very deterministic, right? So you can reproduce everything that happens on a chain on a block by block level. You can simulate everything is instantly monetizable, right? You're stealing the result of the attack is taking capital, right? It's not a proxy uh, to something else, and it's totally public. So as a result, we're seeing more and more of these attacks taking path. Now, one thing that is very different, if you never live in the cybersecurity world, this type, you might think that all the vulnerabilities are like this. So this is very different than traditional attacks that happen against infrastructure, against VPNs, and things like that. Because this type of AI, cyber exploits, what they do is they constantly scan the code and the new contracts coming into the network and things like that, just looking for a path. Right. So it's you're scanning vulnerabilities and you're simulating different things. And the agents don't get tired, right? As long as they have tokens. So they can do this endlessly until they find a path. And then once they find a path, writing the code and pitching that into the network is very easy, right? So I don't know if the USR exploit was AI, but it has DNA, AI DNA all over it, like finding that specific validator in in Unichain that had that port open, writing the code of the exploit, injecting it. I mean, it was very fast, very sophisticated. So things like that are gonna continue. These days, you deploy a contract and you immediately see the bot playing with it. So this stuff is happening and it's only going to get worse. Now, what makes this problem even worse is that the defense mechanism that we have in crypto is audits. And audits are very antiquated, right? Audits is something that doesn't have any use in the software industry other than in crypto because we're dealing with immutable and complex smart contracts. So audits by definition is they take a snapshot of the code like once in time and that's it. Right. And imagine if that is your defense, but the attack is in this constant loop that is scanning for vulnerabilities, not only about your contract, but about everything related to your contract all the time. Like it's completely mismatched. So until we move the defense mechanisms to a playing field in which they're continuing, they're looking at the code all the time, they're adversarial like the attackers, this mismatch is we're only gonna get in more and more exploits. And then what I mentioned before, if you attack a bank or an enterprise, there is the attack, the vulnerability, and there is how do you get the reward, right? What you get information, how do you sell it? Those things. In DeFi is the end of it, right? You take the money and that's a price. So it's a very binary outcome. It's a very easy outcome. So it makes it like incredibly attractive honeypot. So what are the solutions? I've been giving you a lot of problems. You should be impressed by now. So when we look at this problem, we came up with two theoretical approaches of potential solution. That's what it was outlined in the paper, at least the first one, the crypto assurance network. And it got like a sort of quite an extremely positive reaction from the sort of BC and DeFi community. So the one solution is this idea of a crypto assurance network. That is this network of cybersecurity pipelines are constantly defending about these attacks, and we're gonna go into the architecture. And the other one is this idea of formal AI-based formal verification. So formal verification is a very well understood paradigm in crypto, but it's very expensive and almost nobody really does it. But with AI now, we have an opportunity to circumvent a lot of these limitations. So I'll go quickly through this and we can go through questions. So the idea of the crypto assurance network, you can think about this almost like a bit tensor or an avalanche with subnet, but for cybersecurity defense. So cyber attacks are not a one-shot problem. It's not that you give Claude oh, please find me all the vulnerabilities on this, and it just does it, right? Typically, you create pipelines that are looking at different things, different forms of reasoning, where you're analyzing the code, whether you're trying different type of exploits, and you do this in different loops, and you get different validations and things like that. So imagine a network that has different subnets that each one is specialized on those type of attacks, and you have top research teams in the market that are incentivized to contribute pipelines for that. So one could be focused on economic attacks. One could be focused on static reasoning. One could be focused on Oracle manipulations and things like that. And then you have this parent coordination layer. Again, the big tensor architecture is very similar to this, in which you have a job of scanning Uniswap, right, for this thing, and you distribute the task into the specialized subnet. The specialization is important because you want different cybersecurity teams to plug in their pipeline with the infrastructure that they know into the area that it specializes and has certain level of isolation, modularity, uh, and all that. And the fact that why a crypto network is because it's incentivizing this is quite important, right? Like uh how do you attract top cybersecurity research team to push pipelines into this scene, and for what reason? So these are some of the subnet that you could have, from a static reasoning that is literally looking at a bytecode, all the way to runtime anomalies of looking at a main pool and trying to determine anomalies and things like that. If you want to go deeper into this, you can we can you can read the white paper that it goes really deep into the architecture of the different layers and the different categories. And then there has to be an infrastructure for this type of thing, because a lot of the attacks, in a quite paradoxical way, that have happened recently, a huge percentage are related to just infrastructure, multi-sigs, permission uh, attacks. So having circuit breakers and operational controls across those uh, infrastructure components, from multi-sigs to all the other elements that are used to secure protocols, is fundamentally important, right? Having assurances that that configuration is correct. So having agents that are constantly checking those configurations and making sure that they're robust and that they cannot be manipulated. And think about this like an antivirus situation, right? It's a cat and mouse game, and it's always been like that in cybersecurity. Uh, but I don't know if the exploiters are the cat, let's assume that now the cat is way bigger and way faster and way meaner. So we need to be able to counterpunch with the same type of infrastructure. So the other advantage of the network is that you get all the benefits of crypto, right? In terms of what are the pipelines that are performing well, the reputation, the trust, the rewarding the better pipeline, not routing a task to cybersecurity pipelines that are not performing correctly, and things like that. Because it's a cat and mouse game, this makes sense for a decentralized network, right? It's not that you can have one solution. Maybe collect security or cloud security is all you need, but it doesn't seem that way. Like Microsoft M-Dash proved that, right? Like a network of agentic, highly specialized agents were able to outperform the models, and the models are going to get better. So those networks need to keep up with it. So it feels like it's a better architecture to bank on it. The complement to this, and probably a component of the network, but I think this is so important that it deserves its own category, is formal verification. So formal verification is essentially writing mathematically correct proof of code. And in the language that is the most used for this is called Lean. And Lean is very, very complex to use. And it's also very expensive, right? Like writing proof takes a lot of time and is computationally very expensive. The what has changed, so that's why this is a known solution, but no, it has never been widely implemented. What has changed over the last few months, particularly since December with the release of Cloud 4.5, is that now these models can't write link code very accurately. So you can have now AI assisted formal verification that are not that expensive to write. So instead of writing math in a theorem-like format, you can write human language, right, English, with the specs and generate the link proof that validate what the code's supposed to do. I believe Vitalik just wrote a long form post about this idea a few days ago. So this is like a serious thing, right? Like this is something that we can take advantage of it that could take the formally verified code on chain from a small percentage to a very high percentage. So, and then eventually, right, you can have all capabilities of formal verification as things like oracles, right, that could verify the contracts all the time, compilers, right? Like the Viper compiler that can take code and formally verify not 100%, but a huge, let's say loosely formally verify. If that's a term, there you go, LFV, like I just quoted a thing. So it gives you certain percentage of coverage, which is way more than the 0% that most projects have today. So if this works, right, you can go very simply from, okay, this is what a protocol should do. Here are the specs. Write the formal verification and run it and do that continuously with every version. And that gives you a level of continuous coverage over time. If complementary, you have a network that is constantly running cybersecurity defense pipelines. The these are so the way we think about this is a systemic risk for the ecosystem. This is bigger than anything we're facing right now, and this is important that the entire ecosystem gets behind initiative related to cyber defenses. Protocols need to become more secure. It's almost like we're ignoring these problems in DeFi, and we Centora lives in DeFi, so we're fairly concerned about this. Then there is the problem of how do you attract top research teams to actually work in those problems and get institutions behind it. You hear a lot of buzz around the Q day, right? The quantum the risk for DeFi. Recently, Google Research published this paper in which they sort of show that they can theoretically break the algorithms that secure Bitcoin within a time frame of around a time frame of 2029. Now that was highly theoretical. The thing about quantum is whether the algorithm, so the, quantum has been operating in two main algorithms, Shor and Grover, for the last almost 30 years. The algorithms are going to evolve, and maybe it will be able to theoretically break the Bitcoin cryptography, but operationalizing that, the way quantum computing works is because it's non-deterministic. It's not zeros and ones. It's a thing called qubit. You need a lot of redundancy. And a quantum computing architecture just to get the basic algorithm running just needs millions or tens of millions of qubits. So that level of redundancy for a complex algorithm is probably a decade plus away, based on the most optimistic estimate. So quantum is probably real, but the AI could be next week, right? And this is a very systemic risk to our ecosystem. So you're confronted with two futures. If we don't do this, there could be a future in which Solana gets hacked, a new chain gets hacked, and all the protocols are affected, and that sets the space back into the Stone Age, or just like an FTX type moments, but maybe many times worse because it's a systemic infrastructure problem with the entire ecosystem. Then the positive outlook here is all the tools, all the techniques that are needed for defending against these things are public now. We all have access to models. I think crypto as an industry, it doesn't have a lot of cybersecurity muscle. Like there is not a lot of high quality cybersecurity teams that have been proven working in the space. There are a few. So we need to build the talent muscle. We need to build the infrastructure, but this is a systemic risk. So if this doesn't get solved, there is a world in which everything that we have worked for the last 15 years might go away in a couple of hacks. And that is not as crazy as it sounds. So it is important to start boosting the defenses, to start keeping up with the attackers, because for the time being, this is only gonna get more serious. There are many, potential solutions to this. The two that I see in front of me is the AI augmented formal verification, this idea of the assurance network, right? We build blockchains for every stupid thing in the world. Why wouldn't we build a blockchain or build it on top of a chain? Why wouldn't we build a distributed network to defend this ecosystem that we have built over the last 15 years? So there are multiple of the top executives in Web3 that have called after this to say like this has to be done. How do we do it? How do we fund it? I think this is an initiative that somebody in the industry uh, should take more seriously, because we're one or two hacks away from being in like very, very serious trouble. With that, I would like to open up for questions. You can use the Q&A or the chat. The next webinar, we're going to discuss a topic when, obviously, we're going to discuss about the current composition, the current structure challenges in crypto markets, modeling tail risk in DeFi. I believe one of our researchers, Patrick Lofron, is gonna lead that webinar. I'm sorry if it's not Patrick. But it should be a very deep one. So the link for registration is in the chat. So you should go and register. With that, I would like to open for questions. I think Jorge Alberto is saying, can you please explain one more time the exploit in Aave? So the exploit in Aave, I actually didn't explain it in as part of the webinar. It was not necessarily so it was this vulnerability that it was found that the attacker was able to take a lot of RSCs that was already sort of burned in mainnet, but it was locked in layer zero, get it on the other side, go to Aave and borrow it through a sequences of steps, and whether that was AI based or not is TBD. Any other questions? Okay, no questions. Questions going once, twice. Well, thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you on the next